what business are you currently involved in yourself?
I'm a small-scale farmer. At the moment, I'm farming out in my rural home in Marondera. I'm doing some market gardening, and I'm looking after pigs and poultry.
Thank you very much for that. You know, I've been looking for people who are running their own businesses and involved in agriculture sector. I'm very happy you have managed to join us on this particular program. What are some of the opportunities that you would say they are available in the agricultural sector?
I think there is a huge market for agricultural produce in Zimbabwe at the moment. If you go into any supermarket or any of these retail outlets where they sell vegetables, you'd find out that about 60 to 70% of the produce in there is imported from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So that alone tells you that there is a huge market, and especially more so now that Zimbabwe is struggling with getting foreign exchange. Why would anybody be importing something that one can supply locally? So I think it's the supply side of things that needs to improve. So opportunities in agriculture are immense. All we need to do is tap into them. And quite a number of these vegetables are short-term. You know, you harvest 30, 45 days. I think the longest you're looking at maybe 120, 130 days. So you can actually turn them around a lot. They're better than tobacco. I think you get your returns a lot quicker than maize. So vegetables, the way they are being imported mainly from South Africa, present a huge opportunity for local people to get into that particular sector.
Yeah, thanks very much. I need just to reiterate that I think I've also made the very same observation. A number of people at the moment, maybe due to COVID-19, are actually failing to get access to a lot of other vegetables that they would have required on a day-to-day basis. Now, getting on to the very subject matter that we wanted to discuss about, you are an expert when it comes to procurement and sourcing. How critical, how important it is for businesses, no matter their size, for them to procure and buy right?
I think in any venture, in any operation, if people don't buy correctly, they will bring into their organization a lot of substandard things, be they service or materials. So you've got to buy the correct quality at the right price. And those are very, very critical because they determine the end product that you are going to churn out as an organization, if you are processing or if it's a service. The end product derives its quality from the raw material that you bring in. So that part of a business is extremely critical, and it's got to be handled at the highest office in the organization if possible.
And from your own experience and exposure, do you think companies have been prioritizing sourcing and procurement?
Not really. I think those that have realized that the importance that procurement plays in an organization have been very, very aggressive in making sure that it stays where it's supposed to be in the hierarchy of any organization. For others, they have kind of put it subordinate to other departments, and it hasn't served them well because they've ended up with expensive materials, substandard materials, and they've ended up being uncompetitive in terms of the produce that they then put onto the market. And others are learning, and I'm actually glad to say, as they learn, they realize that, okay, your procurement is probably at the same level with your production, with your sales and marketing, and you also have your procurement there, not as a subordinate department, but as an equal partner at the table as you're making decisions.
Very important contribution you make there. Would you maybe take us through, are there any recommended systems and procedures in as far as procurement is concerned for it to be effective in an organization?
They sure are. I think the stereotypes are people are very quick to go to tender. They like that very much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a proponent of that system because
Okay.
I believe all it does is, I think you find, especially in parastatals, people use tender system, but it's filled with a lot of problems. And half the time you hear people didn't buy the correct things, yet the tender system was there. For me, in any organization, if you are going to buy the right thing, you either buy from the source, which is the manufacturer, and if the manufacturer cannot sell directly to you, you then go to their appointed agencies. You must try and eliminate middlemen as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at it from that viewpoint, an organization has got to carry out an audit of the materials that they require and then find out the manufacturers of those particular products and engage them directly. Why go through a third party? Because the only reason you would find people going through third parties is they have failed to secure from source. And you need to interrogate why that is not possible. Because obviously in any big organization, you'd find there is a business-to-business arrangement where one big company is selling to another. And then you also have other smaller players who probably by the nature of their business, they don't consume that much. So they are unable to buy directly from the manufacturer. Such organization, they probably take the option of going to appointed agencies, or they would do collaboration with fellow smaller entities in order for them to come up with the quotas, if there is any such system, for them to be able to access directly from the manufacturer. I'll just quickly give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a big cordials manufacturer or processor, you're making products like any cordials. I don't want to mention company names because it would probably be not professional.
Sure.
But if you are a big cordial processor, it would be very unfortunate for you to be buying your sugar from wholesalers. Why not go directly to the processor, like in Chirezi, where those people would sell directly to you because you consume a lot? If you are a big construction company, you're making houses, or maybe you are into highway construction, why would you go to a hardware store to buy your cement and aggregates and not go directly to the big players like Lafarge and PPC? Because those are the sources. The moment you start to hear a big construction company going into a small hardware shop to buy their supplies, you have issues. Because already the costs are so high. Why not go to source? So I don't support that tender system where people flight an advert in the paper, and a lot of the people that respond to those tenders are probably, excuse the word, for lack of a better word, they go to briefcase business people. Somebody who doesn't even have an office. And strange enough, such entities manage to win the tender, and then they struggle with performance. So why go that route when the other avenue, which is going to benefit you, is available? Is my question to organizations.
Mr. Due, when we're talking about procurement, when should an organization consider buying local, and when should they consider buying regionally, as well as making a decision to buy internationally? When are those decisions made?
I think that is driven by the material or the service that an organization wants to procure. Obviously, you look at local first. If the material or the service is not locally available, you go regionally. Obviously, closer to where you are, the better. If it's not available regionally, you go international. So the main decision is for the organization to actually exhaust all opportunities. If you can't get it locally, because the biggest challenge in going international is once you get something and it doesn't meet your specification, it's extremely difficult to return. So returns are a lot easier dealt with locally or even regionally. But even returning products regionally is an issue, because you get something delivered to you from a company in Durban, it comes to Harare, you find, it's out of spec. What do? You find there's always going to be a compromise. The supplier would say, can you not use it? And we will discount it. You are already moving out of your specifications because international trade by its nature is that complicated. But if you're buying something from a local company, returns or replacements are a lot easier to deal with. So first choice would be going local. However, if a local supplier is so expensive that you land something in the country cheaper, buying internationally, and Forex permitting, you take that option. So really, at the end of the day, a local producer or a local supplier must see that they are competitive. You will have so many reasons why people don't want to buy local. Some of them are quite flimsy, and also they have the luxury of accessing Forex. If you are out of Forex and your local supplier is the only one available, I'm sure you would come to terms with them and buy local. It helps because what you're doing is you are creating employment downstream. It benefits everybody. It's a win-win situation because if you are buying locally, it means that local supplier is going to employ people and probably they are your customers. So you benefit. If you import, you must understand that you might end up importing unemployment and therefore killing the market that is likely to consume your product. So one should not only look at their organization, but they must look at the full picture. Who is your customer? How do you lure those customers? What incentive are you giving to the customers? By probably a raw material from their company, they in turn will buy the finished product that you're making. So you are creating a consumer for the products that you're making by buying locally. I think you would agree with me. Everywhere you go, people are saying, buy South Africa, buy UK, buy America. We want to make America great. It's all about supporting each other, but we have to do that bearing in mind that no one is taking advantage of the other organization. Everybody is coming to the table, I think, with almost like an open book policy, although I believe there's no such thing. People would say to you, you know what, we're not making a lot of money from this deal. We've put all our cards on the table, but at the back of their mind, they know what they say. And I think industries have got to be as transparent as possible without having to give away their trade secrets.
Mr. Dube, my next question then would be, we still have seen a lot of maybe not necessarily raw materials, but a lot of products are still coming from outside the country, and in particular, China. And they're still being landed here competitively. What is the reason we still have got such scenarios? And then are we still having a huge appetite for foreign products? How do you respond to that?
I think there are various reasons as to why certain products continue to land here cheap. I'll probably quickly give you three. The first reason is when you look at imported raw materials into the country, our rates of duty are extremely high. So a manufacturer in Zimbabwe is likely to produce something more expensive in comparison to, say, a producer in South Africa. That then forces people to import products from South Africa because by virtue of the drawback systems, a South African producer will get the duty given back to them by their country as a way of promoting manufacturing. In Zimbabwe, a manufacturer has imported raw materials probably from the same source in China with their counterpart in South Africa, but because they are selling locally, there is no incentive whatsoever. So a product that they have both imported, let's say for argument's sake, at 10 United States dollars as a raw material into both Zimbabwe and South Africa, the South African will then probably get $2 back as a drawback incentive from their government in South Africa. They are then able to land a finished product in Zimbabwe for $11 US. And the Zimbabwean manufacturer, after having put all the different components, your labor, the return on their investment, they end up selling the same product maybe for 13. So your consumer will say, I would rather pay 11 as opposed to 13, because $2 is more expensive. So it's not an appetite for imported products, but I think it's purely driven by cost. Our levels of duty are extremely high. I've engaged people in the Ministry of Industry. I've given them scenarios. I've given them comparisons. I've said to them, look at our tariff book. Probably all you need to do is just go and copy the rates of duty applicable in South Africa. Because certain components like raw materials for making plastic packaging, in South Africa, the raw materials would probably come in at between 5 and 10%. When the same come into Zim, it's between 20 and 25%. It's already expensive. So our government takes too much money through customs by the way of the levels of duty that they pay. They collect from consumers and businesses. If you go to Zambia today, you'd find that they import a lot of seeds, herbicides and pesticides used in agriculture. Those go into Zambia duty-free. The wholesalers and people involved in the trade are passing it the same on to the consumers and the farmers. The farmers there have a huge incentive. The same chemicals that are passing through our borders, through Beitbridge, Chirundu into Zambia, will land in Zambia a lot cheaper than they land in Zimbabwe. One can drive to Lusaka to buy the same, bring it back, but it's passed through here from South Africa, and it would have been extremely expensive to land it from South Africa paying the local duties. So our Ministry of Finance has got to seriously look at what do they want? Do they want to encourage manufacturing? Are we really for sure? Because the relationship between industry and commerce and finance has got to be one that promotes production, one that is for manufacturing, but it is not, because Ministry of Finance is probably more driven by collecting revenue, and the Ministry of Industry is almost like a subordinate ministry to finance. Every time you take something through to them, the feedback has not been encouraging. So you have a lot of forex, which is meant for things that we don't make here, being used for things that could be procured locally. You know, you look at, we have a lot of fast food outlets. Most of those people are importing potatoes and probably partially processed frozen chips from South Africa. Yet farmers are struggling what to do with their potatoes here. Do you think it's a wise expenditure taking forex to South Africa to pay for potatoes, to pay for onions? If you look at the things that we are importing, forget the toothpicks because they require a plant to process them. I'm just talking of something that somebody will just uproot from their garden and sell, but we bring those in from South Africa. Why? I know there are bilateral agreements and things like that, which means that trade is going to be there between countries. But our customs they've got to make it work for the local producer. Their tariffs have got to be reviewed. At least make them at par with South Africa, just as a starting point. But if you are going to try and offer a bit of protectionism to local industry, they've got to come in under the South African ones, because when a South African company is selling into Zim, they get an export incentive. Duty, they draw back. The local cannot. So a local will always be expensive in comparison to South Africa and even Zambia.
Mr. Due, thanks very much for that. My last question maybe for this particular program is going to be on the lockdown. South Africa has extended the economic and national lockdown. Zimbabwe has done the same. Now, when it comes to procurement, how is the lockdown going to affect procurement, or has already affected procurement? But not only that, going forward, how and what is going to change when it comes to procurement?
I think procurement, just like any other sector, in all economies, I think this is a global issue now. Everyone is going to struggle. People have not been doing any meaningful production. So the demand for raw materials, those that had materials, I think they have been using them. Those that are still working, they've been using a little bit at a time. And we must all understand that the bulk of raw materials for most nations come from China. So China had a lockdown a lot earlier, and people were consuming the raw materials.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when the rest of the world went on to lockdown, they had already stopped the pipeline of raw materials flowing in from China. So we're going to have huge congestion, I think, on the seas, at the ports, and priorities. Obviously, the bigger players will always have priority because of the quantities that they take. So some small organizations are likely to be forced to paying a premium. If they can't afford it, they don't do production, and probably they could even go under just because of this lockdown. So there is going to be a serious shortage. And I think we've seen certain things happening, like the raw materials that probably are being used for making the sanitizing fluid. Probably they are supposed to be used for manufacture of detergent. So you are likely to have a shortage in that area. And the players in that particular market will scrounge around for raw materials. It's going to be very, very difficult. I think the startup from COVID-19 is we're going to have a very, very difficult Christmas going forward. I really don't know when the whole thing is going to blow over, but I think 2020 is going to end on a very, very difficult note for most economies. You can see the bailout packages that are being espoused in developed nations. We don't have that luxury, especially in our country. So, and some employers, to ask them to pay salaries and wages to people who have not been coming to work is going to be a very difficult thing. So it's going to be really tough, not only for procurement, but I think it will cut across the whole economy. It's something that we had not planned for. A lot of organizations, I think I've said before in seminars where people were talking about DRP, your disaster recovery plans, and I think they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
This is one particular black swan event that has brought something in our lifetime. I think we'll be better for it, but it's going to be extremely difficult. For those that have stronger businesses, I think it's time to look at the way you do business and change. I hear a lot of people talk about people working from home, not in manufacturing, because I think 98 to 99% of the jobs in manufacturing require the members of staff to be on a specific workstation. So those can definitely not work from home. And those are the people that will make what we eat. Those that are doing those that can work from home, probably financial services, some technical people like that. The rest that are into manufacturing, like you're saying, the people that require the raw materials, they can't work from home. They've got to go to a factory which is open, and we are not going to open anytime soon. I think the extension, like you rightly said, there's an extension in South Africa. South Africa is a big source for us here in Zim. So I think when South Africa is closed, naturally, we should close, because where would you get your raw materials from? So as others are saying, it's copy and paste. Sometimes if your source is closed and you decide to open, you're only opening to go and probably sit at your factory because you won't have anything to use. So my prayer is that it gets over quickly in South Africa and it opens up our borders, and we try and go back to work. And probably it's baby steps. We all have to start afresh, unfortunately. But I think we have learned something, and it will make us stronger and better.
Mr. Dube, thanks very much for the time that we have had today. I hope to engage with you again very soon. And maybe next time we'll be talking about your agricultural projects that you are working on. Thank you very much for the time.
That would be much, much better, because I'm very passionate about farming, feeding people. You know, that's one area where you can never go wrong. All these other industries, you know, can always come second, but feeding people is number one. Be safe, my brother, and social distancing, like they say, keep away from everybody, and I'm sure it will be over very soon.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Dube.
Yes.